So I recently saw the movie I, Tonya, and I thought it was an excellent example of the battle of light versus dark. Spoiler alert, by the way, if you haven't seen the movie, please press stop and go watch it because it's an awesome film. Margot Robbie, the actress that plays Tonya Harding, narrates it and everything, and it's just a really interesting movie, and it definitely holds your interest. As we all know, the story of Nancy Kerrigan and Tonya Harding, was all over the news. So, I'm sure people would say, well, Christine, I kind of know what the storyline is. Well, this really focuses on Tonya's life and her upbringing and her own personal journey. And that's why I just think it's a really interesting movie to watch, because if you pay close attention, you can see where she had the power to change the course of her life. And my tagline used to be putting the normal in paranormal. And so anytime I can grab pop culture and relate it to the other side, I will. If I can use this movie to teach people about the other side, I'm going to do it. So this was really hard for me to watch because I did see the battle of light versus dark going on in her life pretty profoundly, but it's the way the world is. What can I say? All right, so number one, we know that ice skating is Tonya Harding's life purpose. Her mom is complaining in the movie because her 4-year-old daughter will not shut up about it. I want to go skating, I want to go skating, I want to go skating. This is her truth. This is her God-given gifts and talent that she is supposed to water like a seed. Her truth, her purpose, this is the light. It's what she's supposed to be doing with her life. And her mom does help her water that seed. Her mom puts a lot of her money towards fostering that ability in Tonya and really supporting her on that path. So her mom gets brownie points for that aspect, is that she really did help, Tonya move forward with the skating and embracing her life purpose. In embracing your life purpose, it's actually a decision based in self-love, because you're saying, I love myself enough to pursue these God-given gifts and talents despite the haters, despite the competition, despite the fear and the self-doubt and whatever might creep in. So I do commend Tonya for having that courage of conviction to continue putting one foot in front of the other and move forward, because it's not always easy. So the fact that she actually took these action items to embrace that truth, and she was the first person to land the triple axel, so she worked hard, and so that work that she put into her life purpose, she also deserves to be commended for that as well. She worked hard. So unfortunately, she had an abusive mother, verbally abusive, physically abusive, and in the movie, her father leaves, and this is actually a really sad scene because you see her literally begging her dad to take him with her in order to essentially save her from her abusive mother. Instead, the father drives off, and you can see how at this point, Tonya, being a young girl, is now a victim of her father's free will because he didn't take her with him, and her mother's free will because her mother is abusive. So the way her mother chooses to treat her every day, she's a victim of her mother's free will. Now, what is the light going to do? The light's going to look at Tonya and be like, well, she's too small to do anything, so let's try to bring in some third parties to help her out. So unfortunately, Tonya also becomes a victim of third parties' free will because the people also witnessing this abuse didn't do anything or say anything. So the fact that Tonya was just kind of stuck in the situation, she became kind of a victim of everyone's free will, unfortunately. And so, I guess, she could have theoretically been like Drew Barrymore in Irreconcilable Differences, I want to divorce my parents. But at this point, there's not really much she can do. So she is now a victim of everyone's free will, basically. Even though she has free will herself. But still, she's just too young at this point. But as she gets older, she can do something about it. Okay? She can embrace her truth and say, my mother is abusive. I need to distance myself from her because this is no longer good for me. And this is a decision based in self-love, like I said, which is always supported by universal energies. And this is her protecting herself, okay? So she's embracing her truth and she is showing self-love, okay? And that is the light. That's where the light rises up to try to help you out. If the shame and guilt takes over, that's the dark. That is the dark saying, Tonya, you're a bad person for leaving your mother. You know you owe her for supporting you in your career. What kind of daughter writes off their own mother? And so the dark is going to creep in and try to make her feel like crap for making that decision based in self-love. And especially since we accept the love we think we deserve, it was also pounded into Tonya's head that she's not deserving of love, that she deserves this abuse. And also, her mom made it very clear that she does owe her. I made you a champion. I made all these sacrifices. All my money went towards you, blah, blah. So her mom made it very clear that she really does owe her. So, you know, and unfortunately, because it was pounded into her head that this is, you know, what she deserves, this is also what she ends up dating and ultimately marrying. So she ends up repeating the pattern of abuse with an abusive husband. Because this is the person that she's drawn to, right? And this is the person that she is an energetic match for. Law of attraction. Now, this was a really hard part of the movie for me to watch because she keeps leaving her husband. She keeps leaving, and I'm like, yes, go do it, self-love. And she just keeps coming back because the dark doesn't want her to leave her husband. The dark doesn't want her to leave her mom. The dark doesn't want her to leave her husband. The dark wants her to stay with her husband. So after she leaves him, those thoughts are going to creep in. Tonya, you know you're lonely. You know you love him, and you know you need him. Do you really think you can compete without him in your corner? You're going to screw up your competitions. And the dark won, and she went back. And that is part of the movie where she actually says she went back to him because she didn't really feel like she could compete without his support. So even though he was verbally and physically abusive, he still verbally supported her skating career. So she was convinced that she needed him, and so she went back. And I guess the most important message I can give you guys is I want you to watch this movie and think about how her life would have been different if she was able to give love to herself. And I know that's kind of a ridiculous thing for me to say because it's like, well, Christine, look at her life. She never really had a chance. You know, since birth, she's been abused and, you know, really? You expect her to demonstrate all this like self-love and positive self-esteem when she never really had a chance? And the answer is, yeah. We actually have more personal power and more control over our own situations than we think because we command universal energies via our free will decisions. Let me repeat that. We command universal energies via our free will decisions. We're all just a bunch of witches and warlocks commanding energies. So that's why it's really important to make decisions based in self-love, which are always supported by universal energies. So she was constantly looking for love outside the self. And if she could just sit still, grab herself by her bootstraps and try to develop self-love and focus on how she treated herself throughout the day. Was she being gentle with herself? Was she being too hard on herself? Was she complimenting herself throughout the day? How you treat yourself is really important, and that really is how to develop self-love because it's a process. It's a process that happens over time. Rome wasn't built in a day. So that's one of the things that, you know, was really hard for me to watch is just looking for love outside the self. It's like, give it to yourself, because her life would have been so different if she was able to do that. She would have been so much more empowered, and she could have grabbed the bull by the horns by saying, universe, I reject this romantic partner, bring me something better, and then sit down and write a list of the things she wants in a soulmate and start manifesting that and start fantasizing about that. And the universe would have brought her soulmate forward. Now, that probably wouldn't have happened right away because they would have wanted her to take a break and be single for a little bit and try and develop that self-love and try to do some healing and make her a closer energetic match for her soulmate. So they probably would have had her be single for a little bit, but they would have eventually brought who she manifested onto her path. Okay? So that would have been her really taking charge and demonstrating personal power and just saying, I deserve better, right? But instead, unfortunately, she stays with him and she sends a message to the universe of, I don't love myself and neither should you. So she stays with this abusive husband. They're fighting, they're getting into it. They have all this negative energy swirling around their household. So they become a nice, juicy steak for the dark. And so they attract more darkness to their household with all of the fighting. Because they're an energetic match for it. And so at this point, because she is an energetic match for the dark really wants to stick it to her. And the dark is all-knowing and very strategic. So they're going to sit there and be like, all right, how can we really screw her up? I know, life purpose. Let's go after her truth, because the truth is the light. So we want to take this life purpose away. So what does the dark do? The dark influences the people around her to orchestrate an event that results in Tonya never being able to compete again. They just took her career away. And her life purpose. Now, she can still, I guess, skate recreationally, but not in a competition, not for money. And when the judge's decision came down, I was just shaking my head like, yep, there's the dark. Let's get her. There's the dark. 10 points for the dark right there. And so, bye-bye life purpose. And at this point, Tonya has a decision to make. Am I going to choose a career based in self-love? No, she is not. She chooses to pursue boxing. Why? Because she's good at fighting. She's used to it. And she can make money. So she uses her ability to fight to pay the bills. But there's just one problem here. This is not her life purpose. This is not her truth. And self-protection is part of self-love. So your body is a temple. So when you pursue a career where your body gets injured and you purposely put yourself in that position, you again send a message to the universe saying, I don't protect myself or love myself, so neither should you. And you attract more darkness onto your path. And, if your body is a temple and you're not protecting it, it's just, you pursued money, you pursued ego, you pursue, anger. Sorry, boxing fans, but from the dark. So, the self-protection just never happened. And in this scene, she actually acts pretty bitter, where she falls to the ground, makes some bitter comments about life, and then gets back up. So she seems pretty bitter about her life. And that's where I was like, well, there were certain times where you could have gone a different direction. And she did have the power inside of her. And ultimately, she did end up being happily married to someone else and having a child, and she's a good mother to that child. So eventually the light did take over, thank God. But I guess that's one of the things that I really wanted to point out is if we command universal energies via our free will decisions, how would her life have been different? How would her life have been different if she actually did make decisions based in self-love at each crossroads? Via the law of attraction, I guess that's what I wanted to ask, is the law of attraction is alive and well, and the battle of light versus dark is very obvious in this movie. And if decisions based in self-love are always supported by universal energies, I just want you to remember that the next time you're at a crossroads, because it could just change the course of your life. So I ask you, is God in charge or are we? Food for thought. And in the meantime, take care and be well. Thank you.